So, welcome back to the 9th class of this series. The previous class we talked about Marburg virus, and prior to that we talked about the Ebola. So, today our journey will start with one of the major category A bioterrorist agent, that is anthrax. So, we will do bit of a modification from here onward. The agent or the microbes what we will be talking about, we will simultaneously talk about the different kind of sensors which have been developed till date, and eventually by the time we reach the 5th or the 6th week, we will revisit some of them and their mechanistic details. So, in that way what will happen is that you will have a comprehensive idea about the concerned pathogen and its detection module. So, let us start our today's class with anthrax. On a personal note, when we talk about anthrax, anthrax was and is a well-known pathogen. It is nothing new. But in recent time, if we talk about in last 25 years, the most known act of bioterrorism which threatened one of the most well-developed economy of the world is anthrax. And from my personal perspective, it has a personal link. The known bioterrorist act happened in the year 2001, and it happened after the Twin Tower was attacked. So, at that point, United States was reeling under the 9/11 attack. Everything was in a chaos. All the global agencies like FBI and other agencies were investigating into the Twin Tower blast and the role of terrorists involved in it. On the backdrop of this, anthrax attack was carried out, and it was that very same year 2001 when I migrated from Switzerland to United States in the month of January. So, I still remember it was a pretty cold evening when my flight landed there, and just like other people, I thought it will be a wonderful time in United States for me, because I was there for a job. Little I knew at that time, that year 2001, when I landed there in the month of January, by halfway through the year, story of the world will completely change, and it will change permanently. And by the end of the year, it even changed drastically. So, next 10 years, I followed this anthrax story, and today what I will be sharing with you next 2-3 classes will be my understanding of anthrax. At that time, I hardly had any knowledge except the fact, anthrax is a pathogen and it can cause disease, standard textbook knowledge. But when such a textbook knowledge is being used for a threat, for an attack, then you really realize that, wow, this is not that simple. So, that is why as I will walk through, you will realize that there are something very interesting events of anthrax and why we really need to understand each one of them, not only anthrax, all of them. To start off with, it all started through postal mails. So, if you look at the slide out here, you see there is a example of a postal mail out here. It is posted to one of the senators of the United States. So, what the sender or the group of senders did is that they put anthrax spores inside the envelope. The very moment you will open the envelope like this, so what happens is, let's suppose there is an envelope, and mind it is still at that time world was slowly moving more towards emails and other sources, but still Today, postal mail is one of the most reliable way to send stuff from one part of the world to another part of the world. So, what happened when you are opening a postal email like this, you are tearing open the envelope and you breathe, the spores will come into your nasal cavity, and as soon as the spores enter your nasal cavity, you are infected. And this is exactly was the strategy which was followed. So, if you look through the slide, the year as I mentioned 2001, and here what you see is the Washington Post 31 exposed to anthrax on Capitol Hill, house shut down and Senate office closed. So, anthrax attack in the September 2001, known as the Ameri-Anthrax, which is Ameri-Thrax, are an example in which workers have potential exposure to anthrax, and these are, we are talking about the postal workers. BA or Bacillus anthracis laced letters, including one pictured above, was mailed to the news media, and US Congress resulted in 22 people contracting anthrax through inhalation or skin exposure. And we'll talk about these different kind of exposure in the subsequent slide. And these cases, including 5, those were fatal, included people at targeted locations, US Postal Service, which is commonly known as USPS, at the sorting facility, and individual handling cross-contaminated mail at destination facility. So, look at it, if you look at the innovativeness of this act of creating chaos, creating fear and creating paranoia among people, it was massive. It put the whole nation in frenzy. People were scared shit to open letters. People are not ready even to accept parcels. It was a very, very difficult time. And in the history, that was the modern history, a very pre-planned bioterrorist attack. Now we will learn about what really anthrax bacillus is. So, anthrax bacillus, if you read a standard textbook, it will say it's a pathogen or it's a bacteria, it's a microbe which resides in the soil, and it is not really harmful as a spore, it is inactive. Okay. So, if you look through the slide, anthrax Bacillus anthracis, what they commonly they call it BA, possesses 3 primary virulence factors. Okay. So, before we come to the virulence factor, let's walk through this. The bacteria known as Bacillus anthracis produce dormant spores. Remember that, dormant spores. So, that way, if it is producing dormant spores, unless you have a sensor which could detect dormant spores, you cannot really detect whether it is present there or not. Because the dormancy, the challenge is that all the metabolic activities are silent. So, if there is no metabolic activity, there won't be anything which will come out. So, there is no way you can detect. So, for example, if somebody is active, say I am active here. So, I am taking in oxygen, giving out carbon dioxide, I am giving out volatiles from my sweat and all those things. So, you can detect, or I have a IR signature because I am generating heat from this, and you can locate me. But say for example, all my metabolic activities goes down. I am in a calm quiescent phase. Could you identify me? Probably no. That's exactly is the problem, and exactly this is the same problem people face when they had to detect dormant tuberculosis. You cannot. So, you understand the challenge. Whenever we talk about all these things, these are the points what you need to understand, that what are the different kind of mode by which these pathogens play there or orchestrate their living. Okay. Now, coming back in the slide, that can live in the environment or in the soil for a long time, even for decades, almost more than 10 years. And when the spores get into the body of an animal or a person, a place rich in water, sugar and other nutrients, they can get activated and turn into active growing cells. And if you look at it, when they become active, the bacteria can multiply, spread on out in the body and produce toxins that causes severe illness. Now, talking about the what kind of toxins it produces. So, if you look at it, it's a pretty benign thing sitting in the soil, not bothering you till it gets its host. And this is the most challenging part, how to detect dormant spores versus active pathogen. This is the real challenge of all the sensor devices we talk about. And now, if you look at it, what it consists of, it consists of 3 primary virulence factor and extracellular poly-D-glutamate DPGA capsule. As you could see in the picture, there is a poly-D-glutamic DPGA capsule, which is this layer. Okay. Then the lethal factor LF, okay, and the edema factor EF, and all of which are coded in one of the 2 plasmids, PX01 and PX02 plasmids. So, PX01 and PX02 plus, and they are coding for lethal factor, edema factor, and the PA, which is your other factor what we talked about. Okay. So, these are the factors which causes its virulence. So, you realize not only you should have a detection system, you should have a complete idea about its cellular and genetic makeup, because that is where lies your catch from where you can develop the sensor. Now, moving on to the key points what you have to realize. Anthrax can cause severe illness in both people and animals. So, that means you can affect the animal husbandry industry also. The bacteria that causes anthrax occur naturally in soil worldwide. People usually get anthrax from infected animal or contaminated animal product. Now, this contaminated animal product, when you are talking about, that could include fur, that could include, I do not know this part, does that include the meat or other products, and I will leave it for you guys to look at it. Could it get contaminated into the meat, you know? And whenever you get infected, call a healthcare provider immediately if you think that you have exposed to anthrax. Okay. So, these are the key points before we move on to the crux of it. Now, when you talk about anthrax types, the types are divided how you get infected. So, the first one of them is the cutaneous. When we talk about cutaneous, we are talking about skin, anything to do with the skin on your body surface. Okay. So, this happens when anthrax spores get into the cut or scrap in the skin when a person handles infected animals, right, or contaminated animal products like wool, hides or hair. So, that means people who are working in the wool industry, animal leather industry, people who are collecting different kind of fur for multiple purpose, they all have to be extremely careful. And anthrax spores enters through the cut or the wounds or any other exposed part from where the microbe can get access to the intracellular fluid of your body. Okay. So, it mostly shows up in the head, neck and the forearm. Remember, head. So, this is where your symptoms are going to come. And the example was shown is of the forearm and hands. It is most common for anthrax infection and is also considered to be least dangerous. Injection, it was identified in heroin injecting drugs user in Northern Europe, but it hasn't been reported in United States. Injection anthrax is similar to cutaneous anthrax and causes infection deep under the skin or in the muscle where drug was. So, this is a very interesting thing. There is a lot of drug abuse happening across the world. It has been observed that people who take drugs can get infected by anthrax if the needle tip has contamination of anthrax spores. and such anthrax can be pretty deadly because you are injecting it deep inside the body. It is no more on the cutaneous surface, and that is why when we said that cutaneous ones are the least dangerous, because it is not getting into your bloodstream so easily, okay? Because there are innate immunity, adaptive immunity to take care of it. Now, next anthrax, what exactly happened in the postal mails, and which brings you to 2001 attack, which was essentially designed for inhalation anthrax. It happens when a person breathes in anthrax spores. So, they are entering inside your body, and that is where you have sugar, water, and all other needed nutrients for the microbe to flourish. It is the deadliest form of the disease. People who work in places such as wool mills, slaughterhouses, tanneries may breathe in spores when working with the infected animal or contaminated animal product. Inhalation anthrax starts primarily in the lymph nodes in the chest before spreading throughout the rest of the body. So, you realize why we need to have proper care for the workers working in places where animal products are being dealt, starting from slaughterhouse to the wool industry, to the carpet industry, to where fur and all these things are used for other product development. One has to be extremely careful, and not only that, when large number of these kind of products are reaching, say for example, animal leather, fur, there has to be a very strong screening system in place. You realize by this time why it is extremely essential, because think of it, a postal mail, inhale anthrax get into your system, and this is the most dangerous one. Think of the workers working in the tanneries. I mean, if they inhale that, that's it. Even before you detect, it will keep on passing through the cough and cold and all over the place. Okay, so one has to be extremely careful, and after COVID, I believe we have to be even more careful than previously. The third is the gastrointestinal type. It happens when a person eats raw or undercooked meat. So, I realized when I was telling you that it can get into the GI tract, provided the meat you are eating is contaminated with anthrax. It can be directly from the animal. So, be very careful with any animal product like eggs, meat. It should be thoroughly cooked, because when you are cooking, you are breaking down the spores or any active pathogen in it. If it is undercooked, there is always a possibility that this thing may happen. Though in the United States, it has been rarely reported. It affects the upper gastrointestinal tract, throat and esophagus and stomach, and the intestine, causing wide variety of symptoms. So, these are the different modes by which anthrax can get into your system. So, you have to realize that one has to be extremely careful. So, when we talk about workplace ethics in terms of necessary cares, what has to be taken? Say for example, mask is extremely essential, gloves extremely essential, screening of animals or screening for anthrax almost on regular basis is extremely essential for these places, because these are the rules which are extremely essential for the biosecurity purpose. Now, new disease caused by anthrax toxin. This is a very new thing which people are observing, and this is again of importance from industrial perspective. Welders anthrax. You have heard this word welding, right? People who work in the iron industry or steel industry, they do welding. They join the iron pieces and steel and all other things. There are welding is used all over the place. Okay. So, this is the problem in the welding industry, and this is a very, very big business across the world. It's a newly identified and rare disease that has been found in several people who are welders or metal workers. Remember it, metal worker or metal industry is one of the largest industries across the world in terms of construction. This disease causes severe pneumonia and can be fatal. If you are in the welder or metal workers and if you develop fever and chill with sudden cough and chest pain, difficulty in breathing, coughing up blood, see a healthcare provider immediately. And this is something one has to be extremely careful, because people always suspect that it is TB, but interestingly it may not be TB. People are wrongly diagnosed or diagnosed without proper detection system, but this is an emerging problem. So, you look at it from animal, people working with animals, people working in the leather industry, people who are working in the fur industry, from people working in the welder industry. And I am not even talking about any kind of terrorist act, I am talking about simple situation where anthrax may contaminate a system. And by this time you must have been feeling that next time you have to be careful. You have to follow the simple rule of hygiene and not to run away from all this. You have to learn about it. If you do not know, there is no way one can develop sensors, and if you understand how to develop sensor for one, then you will understand how to develop a sensor for another one. The logics will remain the same, but as I mentioned, challenge will always be how we can detect the spore which is inactive in nature versus the active one, because it is the spore which gets into our system and then it gets activated. So, all our thrust area of detection has to be focused primarily on the spore detection. Okay. Now, when you talk about the symptoms of anthrax depend on type of infection. Symptom shows up anywhere 1 day to 2 months. Now, think of it. Now, this is a very interesting thing. 1 day versus 60 days, if it's 2 months, okay, and on average, right. That means this kind of numbers are function of your personal immunity, how much immune your system is and how much innate versus adaptive immunity you possess. Okay. If you are exposed to the bacteria that causes anthrax and if you do not get proper treatment, all type of anthrax are potential to spread through your body and cause severe illness and death. There are medications, there are vaccines, but you have to first of all get it detected ASAP. Now, when we talk about the cutaneous, this is a classic symptom of cutaneous abscess, which is the least lethal of all of them. Look at it, group of itchy, small blisters or bumps, a large amount of swelling around the sore. You see this? There is a large swelling out there, huge amount of swelling across the painless sore commonly on face, neck, arms and hands that has black center. You see that black center out there? Okay. Sore appears after the bumps have gone down. So, this is the stage 1 and this is the stage 2 as it is advancing. The sore appears after the bump have gone down. So, now this bump has gone down. So, it means that when it gets there, gets at the site where it is going to infect, it results in swelling in the form of there is a lot of possibly accumulation of fluid which is happening. And such fluid accumulation does make sense because there are immune molecules which are migrating there to stop it, and there are blood vessels, lymph vessels which are kind of damaged or broken, and there is a lot of fluid accumulation, and this is a very common thing. But once the microbe takes control of that area, the fluids dissipate out, and that is what you see is a black scar. for injection of anthrax infected source abscesses deep under the skin or muscle at the injection site. Okay. So, this is the classic example of the cutaneous, and we will close this class at this stage, and in the next class we will move on to the other symptoms what we generally see in anthrax, because these are extremely essential for you to understand, and if you understand for the limited number of situations we will be dealing across this course, you will be knowledgeable enough to target the newer and newer challenges. Thank you.